Hi, so today I'm going to attempt to fit these Lockwood dials for my Nissan Elgrand E51 Mark II. Looking at some of the stuff online, it's pretty straightforward, so we'll go through each step and hopefully get this done. I have found it really hard finding videos of people doing this, so this hopefully will help a few other people. So the first step, just to make our lives a bit easier, is to lower the steering column. Let's get that down as low as we can go. Mine was already down pretty low. And then I've got a trim tool here. I'm going to run this up here and then along the top. So run this in here and then along the top to prise this part off. If you see on the top, I've just started to do that. It's just the front part of the section that I'm taking off. Alright. Okay, so we're going to lift this vent and front panel off now. It should just come straight off. There we go. And then we'll keep this to one side. Now the next thing to do is to unscrew, there's 4 retaining bolts, one here at the top, one here, and we've got 2 on this side, this one, and then one here. So these 4 bolts have been taken out now. I had to use a torque wrench because somebody's obviously been in here before. One of the bolts, the threads was completely gone, so I managed to get it out pretty easily. It was this one down here. I'll just make sure when I'm putting that one back in again at the top, I'll put it at the top so it's really easy for me to access. So this panel is now going to lift out, and there's some connectors on the back which once I've got this panel out, I'll show you what we're going to disconnect. So at the back of the device there's 2 connections, one at the right side and one at the left side. We're just going to pull them out and we'll prise them out, and that will take the dash completely off so that we can then access the back panel to change the dials. So that's these 2 sockets now disconnected. There's the back of the panel that they went into, so there's the first one, the small one, and there's the second one. Mine's came out really easily. So now we can head in and remove this plastic trim. Step, now that we've got it on something soft so that I don't scratch the plastic screen, is to unclip the top set of clips. There's 4 on the bottom, 4 on the top. They just prise off these little nodule, whatever you call them. That will reveal the back of the dash. I'm then going to do the same and take off these so that the front of the dash will come off. That will give me access to the silver rings and the dials on the front. So I've already done one of these. The next step is to pull this needle over the pin and just let it fall to where it rests. And we're going to do that for each dial that we change. So I'm just going to prise this very gently up. Don't know if you can see that. So it goes over the needle. I'm able to do this just with my hands. But you might need to use a tool just to leverage this one up a little bit more, and then it will drop down the same as the Speedo one. So that's both dials dropped down. I'm now going to either take a photograph or mark on the silver ring with a pencil or a dry marker pen that will rub off where these dials fall to, because we need to, when we put the dials back on, make sure that they go back into that same position before we then pull them over the needle. Okay. So as you can see, I've just used a whiteboard marker, a pencil, or I don't know, a bit of tape or a bit of sticky paper or something, just to mark where those 2 dials fall down to. We're now going to take the pins and the dials off, and they should just pull out, prise out. Obviously I've already loosened them to get them over the pin. First thing we're going to do is remove this dial. Obviously it's very different to the Lockwood ones. This is a plastic, kind of transparent with the thing on the top. This is going to go and replace this, and this uses the bezel fitments rather than the actual fitments that are on the back of the dial. You can see here there's 3. So those 3, to unclip these 3, I'll show you, because I've taken off the, I tried it on the revolution counter first, whatever it's called. So the first mistake I made was to try and unclip this white thing, but actually you don't want to do that. You want to go in to the side of that, and where there's the little grey clip, so there's one in there, there's one in there, and there's one in there. First of all, you'll need to use a screwdriver, and you're just prising them off. I would advise to not result in breaking this clip here, doing this one and this one, and then when you ease that one, it should just allow the dial on the front to pop off, and this is what you'll end up with, the LEDs around the cluster, and the bezel ring's still on. So the next thing I'm going to do is now remove the bezel ring, and you do that with these 4 holes here, 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 and here. So I'm going to take this one off, do that dial, and then we'll do the other dial afterwards. So the bezel ring just pushed out really easily with the 4 clips that were on the back that you can see there. They're just very lightly held in with a very small clip. So I took out one and the bezel just popped off very quickly. The next step would now be to install the same, obviously, dial onto the front plate. So we'll do that just now. We'll get this one in place and then we'll take off the second one. So here's the original, here's the new Lockwood dial. I'm now just going to slot this in at the bottom first, and then over the centerpiece, make sure it lines up. And then we're going to take the new pin and we're going to place this pin into the slot here. So here's the dial off now. I've got the new Lockwood one and I've got the new pin, because these pins won't be long enough, so we have to replace it with this pin. One of the things I was looking at was I almost went to put this in here to work it out and it dropped in, and oh my god, I had a panic. I had to tip it upside down and get this back out again. So be careful, make sure that you put the dial on first, then you're going to take the silver end and you're going to push that through so that it locks onto the dial and it won't fall through. So here we go, that's the new pin in. Push it down, it will stop it from moving about. Perfect. So I'm going to clip the silver ring back in place now. Make sure all the 4 clips are solid. Yep. And that's the new side. So that's the old side. You can see it's got a ring here for, you know, the ring that goes around the light, which is really attractive, but obviously I'll probably be losing that with these dials. So I think most people that I've seen online have just replaced one of them. I think it makes sense to replace them both so that there's symmetry. Otherwise one will look, obviously this one would look like it originally did, and the kilometers, the new miles per hour one, would just look slightly duller around the edges. So I think it just makes sense to just change them both. So that's that in place. I'll put this back on and mark it, put it back on the marked line. Both of the Lockwood dials in place. The new pins are in place. The good thing about this is you don't have to remove the fuel gauge or the temperature gauge, so I'm not worried about having to reset them, because they should still be okay when the dash is put back on again and it's started up. So get my silver ring back in. Make sure you're happy with how it looks and it's lined up. It's all lined up with the screen here and the screen here. Okay, so now we can just go back and put these needles on. So when you're putting the needles on, we are going to put them back on at the rest position, and then we're going to go make sure that when they go back on, they are where the markers are. So I've got the little blue marker there, so it's going to go on in that same position, and then I'm going to lift it over and back onto the speedo. And when we do that, we want to do that clockwise back onto the over the pin. Okay. Something I would definitely be aware of when putting these dials on is that they won't sit flush with the new Lockwood dial, whereas with these dials, because this was a raised dial, this would have sat flush on here. So when you're pushing it in, just bear that in mind, that it'll only go so far. So this one hasn't been done yet. I've just moved it over the pin. I'm just about to push it down, but you have to be really careful and make sure you apply that pressure really centrally downwards, because I could feel like I was going to snap the little plastic inserts in here, and I can imagine that would be a right headache. So I've got this one now back on its position. I've slid it over the pin. I'm now going to apply that pressure and lower the needle down as far as it will go onto the white base there. So that's both needles back on, back resting where they should be. I'm now going to connect this back up to the car very quickly using the 2 pins here and here, just to make sure that when it goes on, that these needles are not jumping about and going in the wrong place, and all the electrics and things come back on again, because I'd hate to reassemble this, find that there's a problem. So, dash is back on, 4 screws back in place, and then this dash trim with the air vents clipped in from this side first, and then just pushed it in, working my way along until the first part I took off is clipped back in again. Last thing to do is take it for a run. I've got a speedo on my phone on Google Maps, just to make sure that I'm tracking the right speed in terms of mph, and then hopefully that's it done. I'm liking the look of that. It looks pretty good. I think that you can see reflection on the bezel, but actually it's not that that's see-through, it's just that's the silver ring just reflecting the lights. I've got the dash at its highest at the moment, so it's probably making that look, really bright, but actually you could lower that and it would disappear, I suppose. But really happy with the effect. 65 quid for the Lockwood dials. Bit of a fiddle to get fitted. Probably would take 30 minutes if you knew what you were doing. Took a little bit longer because I was obviously very nervous about breaking plastic clips, etc. And I've never done anything like this before. It's the first time I've ever done that, so pretty pleased with the outcome, and I managed to do it myself. I hope this video helps. Enjoy your Elgrand.